because I've always been into like witchy, esoteric, magic type of stuff, but it was never depicted like I was supposed to be a part of that.
Hello, beautiful humans. Welcome to episode 3 of Deck Creator Corner. Today I will be talking with Shaniqua Leach. This is a really special episode because this is my first interview with somebody who has not published their deck yet. So they're like me. They're still in the process of creating their deck. And so this is going to be a really exciting conversation. I have some tea here with me, and I'm going to go ahead and wait for Shaniqua to jump on here.
Hi. How are you? Uh-oh, did we lose
Oh,
connection? I can see you now.
okay, cool, awesome. Sorry, there was a little weird technical issue there. But yeah, this is really awesome for me. This is a really special kind of episode in this series because, like me, you're kind of in that creative process still, right? Like we're kind
Yep.
of still figuring it out. And yes, you're a little bit more farther along than I am, but I really resonate with like your journey, and I resonate with like the things that you share, and your art is so beautiful.
Thank you.
Um, you're welcome. So before we get started, I would like to just take a deep breath so that we can kind of connect with each other, kind of create a safe space, a relaxed space. By the way, happy Gemini season, right?
Thank
Like
you.
both Geminis here. My
Whoop,
birthday
whoop.
is the June 9th.
Okay. Mine is June
Yeah.
30th, so
Oh,
nine
nice.
days. Yep.
Awesome, super exciting, and yeah, I'm feeling the Gemini vibe.
Oh yeah, me too. It was like once 3 o'clock hit yesterday, I was just like, oh, it's my season. It's time to go.
Yes, yes, I totally agree. But yeah, so I have my little maraca here that I made, and this is an indigenous tool here of the Tainos, were my ancestors here in Puerto Rico. And they used it for cleansing space and for guidance, and also to symbolize the divine masculine coming together with the divine feminine. And
Okay.
then all the seeds inside are like
Gotcha. Like
represent the
life,
universe and
right?
life. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I would like to just take a couple of deep breaths while I cleanse the space with the maraca, and then yeah, set the space and set some safe space. And anybody who is watching with us right now is welcome to join with us in these breathing exercises. It kind of just allows all of us to kind of connect together in this liminal space. So yeah, so let's go ahead and just take a deep breath, and just a couple, maybe two or three, and I'll let y'all know. Thank you for
Thank
doing
you.
that with
That was
me.
nice.
I'm glad that you enjoyed that. Let's go ahead and get started. I would like to do some quick introductions.
So I'm Shaniqua. I am the creative behind my handle, which is known as What Shaniqua's Into, basically across the internet. I also have a website called writingwithtarot.com. Writing, creativity with language and words was my very first love. So when I first got into
Mm,
tarot, it was largely with a lot of writing prompts and journal exercises that I would do for myself before I started
mm,
reading for other people. But when I started reading tarot, I use the Rider Waite Smith system. I've studied Thoth a teensy bit, and I don't really have any experience with the Marseille deck. I'm aware of it,
mm,
but primarily Rider Waite Smith based. But I really struggled to find a deck where I felt like I wasn't an afterthought, if not completely ignored.
mm,
And the type of art that tends to draw my eye is lots of saturated, bright colors, detail, you know, and I couldn't find anything that was by a person of color, specifically stated as being created with the intention of being for people of color, with art that I just loved. You know, there were some black decks available, but not like I really wanted to see, and they were very limited. So I just felt like in some instances I was backing decks because they were marketed toward black people rather than because I loved the deck itself as much as I would want to. So that
Mm.
was kind of just what made me decide I'm just gonna make my own deck. And initially it wasn't supposed to be something like a product to put out, but the feedback that I got after sharing the art was so strong that I was like, you know what, there's probably enough people out there that want a similar list of traits in a deck that this would make sense to put it out there. So that's kind of how I got here.
That's so amazing. And I want to backtrack a little bit for to give a little bit of context to the people watching and maybe to you too. But so I discovered you when when you participated in the summit with Queen Osset in May of 2020.
Hmm.
Um, and like I was just in love with everything you were saying and everything that you were doing, and I was like, yes, she's saying so many good things. Like, yes.
Oh, thank
Um,
you.
so it was just so good, and like it was just so wholesome. And actually, right after that summit, after watching that video, and I followed Queen Osset, and I had a conversation with her. That was what birthed my idea to do the Taino Tarot or the
Hmm.
Taino Oracle. I'm not quite sure which it's going to be, but that one's going to be in honor of like my indigenous Tainos, and I'm going to kind of I'm going to work with my brother, both of us Puerto Rican indigenous Tainos here. I'm going to like work with like trying to restore like the culture and the art through the tarot or oracle.
Hmm.
But it was really born from watching you guys on that summit and watching that conversation that you had. And then my next deck came afterwards. But yeah, so it was really powerful for me to see like, and really like internalize that the idea that tarot for people like you and me, not so much because I am not like a dark skinned person of color.
Hmm.
But even then, like I still have features that aren't represented in tarot decks.
Hmm.
Um, and I had never thought of it. Like I was just like I just saw it right away, and I was just that's just the basic for everybody, and I just
Hmm.
never thought of it. Like the colonial the colonial enterprise is so strong that we forget that we're just not included.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly how I worded it during that summit, but it was such a great conversation because if I remember correctly, that part of the conversation we were just talking about how we don't think about it because whiteness has become equated with standard. And the fact is, that's not true. There are so
Yeah.
many different cultural nuances that get completely omitted when you solely look at something through a European or even a colonial, you know, hate to say it, but lens. And so it's so moving for me to know that as someone who watched that, you listened and then decided to take action, because that's really what the point of that whole conversation was. Let's not
Yes.
throw pretty words around, but what can we do to start shifting this landscape? So I'm so honored that like I was able to inspire you even a teeny bit. Like that's amazing.
That's so great. Thank you for sharing that. And it really truly was inspiring. And I feel like it it inspired a lot of people. And it's like I was sitting there listening and I was like, man, like I feel the same way about like the indigenous Taino peoples. Like we've been completely erased, like
Hmm.
almost completely erased. And so like how can I like what can I do? Like there's no inclusion in the tarot community. And I was like, well, I mean I can make a deck. Like right? That's what we're
Boom.
talking about. Like,
Exactly.
and so that was really inspiring. And so, yeah, so that was kind of the context a little bit for like why why I reached out to you so early on for this series, because like I had already been thinking about it for so long. but two, because I just feel like the work that you're doing is so important and part of this process of this inclusivity, like this diversity in tarot. Like, honestly, like right now, it's hard for me to use tarot decks that now I consciously know have no person of color.
Yeah.
It's
Mm-hmm.
so hard, and some of them I used to love so much, and I'm not gonna say like which ones, but
Right, right.
yeah, it's been hard now because I'm like, I used to love it so much, and I still do to a certain extent, but then it's like,
Mm-hmm.
where's everybody else?
Yeah, because it's because I think it would be one thing if tarot was an oracle system with, say, you know, 15 or 20 cards, maybe even like 30, if it was not as extensive as it is. Having 78 archetypes is a lot, and it's
Yeah.
we talk about tarot like, this is a visual collection of universal human experiences, but we're only going to use one skin tone. It's just kind of like, it's hard not to feel like you are intentionally being omitted from something that's supposed to represent the full gambit of humanity.
Yep.
So it's just, I agree with you. I think it's very important that um, people of color across all different ethnicities really feel confident and comfortable enough to say, this is my interpretation of this vision through the lens of my culture, my ethnicity, my people, and it's just as valid as any and everyone else's, without the need to apologize for it, or feel like
Mm-hmm.
it's so groundbreaking. Like, I'm so happy to see that there are a lot more inclusive and like solely targeted toward people of color decks coming out, but at the same time, it's also kind of like, wow, this divinatory practice has been around for centuries, but it's just now getting to be like, well, yeah, we've called it universal, but now it's going to show up as something somewhat universal. So just a
Yeah,
crazy time.
exactly. Exactly. And so, it's interesting because it kind of brings me back to kind of wanting to know a little bit more about when when did that start happening, and like how long had you been in tarot, like when you're like, okay, I'm gonna make this deck, like I feel confident enough with the cards to say I'm gonna make this deck.
Well, that's for me, that's still something that's evolving as far as like saying I'm confident. I know the cards enough to make a deck.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
so that's still definitely something that is, I think a
Touche.
good tarot reader should constantly be trying to learn more about the tarot, so as not to like get lazy.
Correct.
But I would say it was for me, it was just this desire to see myself, because I've always been into like witchy, esoteric, magic type of stuff, but it was never depicted like I was supposed to be a part of that. I was always,
Mm.
white women, honestly, like especially with like witchcraft and stuff. When I was a child, the only thing I wanted to be for Halloween was a witch, to the point where I had to get told, "Can you pick something else? You've been a witch for 6 Halloweens in a row." Um, um, so when I first discovered tarot, or I shouldn't say discovered, when the universe gave me tarot,
Okay.
because that in and of itself is a whole story. But when the universe gave me tarot, um, initially I was just enamored with the art of the Rider Waite itself, because I could just feel there's something to these, like they're significant, and I didn't even have a physical deck at first. My first start was with a tarot app, but
Mm.
there was something about it that just really really captivated me. And so the day I downloaded that tarot app, since then I've read tarot every single day, and that was about 6 years ago.
Wow.
um, so I would say close to 2 years in, um, I, it didn't even really register to me, that I was working with basically non-inclusive art exclusively, until the conversation around hashtag tarot so white started trending. And this, I think it was started by Kellyanne Maddox a
Yes,
few
it
years
was.
ago.
Love her
And
so much.
yeah, she's incredible. But yeah, I could gush over her all day. But
Yeah.
I never really thought about it, and it just made me start asking myself a lot of questions about why didn't this ever bother you that you were so visibly erased? Why didn't it ever cross your mind that, wow, all the decks that you have are like white or animals or black and white with European features? Like there's no representation of you and your culture unless it's like, oh, maybe we'll put an interracial couple on this two of cups, or because I'm also bisexual, so I'm part of that community.
Right.
Maybe we'll put a gay couple on the Four of Wands, and like that's it. You know what I
Yep.
mean? Everything
It's
else
like the
is
token gay or the token
right,
black
the token
person or the
person of
token.
color
Yeah.
and the token gay, and be happy with these other 76 cards of heteronormative European culture. And it's just kind of
Yep.
like, there's nothing wrong with straight people. There's
Right.
not that much wrong with European culture, but there's, like you said, there's just so much more out there. So at that 2-year mark, I decided, well, I should start studying art if I'm really going to make a deck. Even though I intended it to be just something I used for myself, I wanted to like what I was looking at. So
Right.
I said, I should study art. I'm going to figure out how to draw people, how to draw environments. I'm just going to buy some courses, and I'll dedicate a year. I'll give myself a year to just practice the fundamentals of art, and then I'll start working on my cards. And I put my first like doodle sketch on Instagram in May of 2019,
Okay.
and started on that Afro Drip Tarot in March of 2020, and been working on it ever since. So that's kind of the
And here we
journey for how
are.
I got there.
Oh, that's so amazing. That's such a lovely story, and it really, I feel it's gonna resonate with a lot of people who kind of feel like they're not really identified by the Rider-Waite-Smith and by a lot of decks. Tarot is for everyone.
Hmm.
That's really what needs to be kind of highlighted, right? It's about like how can we make tarot so that it can be accessible and inclusive to people of all body shapes, of all body like potentials, right? Like disabled, abled bodies, like any kind of like realities that we have.
Hmm.
It's we've got to represent it. We're modernizing, right? Like we're updating the tarot because maybe back then the Rider-Waite-Smith was very much like relevant to the day.
Hmm.
People
Hmm.
looked like that, people dressed like that, people,
Hmm.
functioned in those ways. And so like
Exactly.
now we're having to like evolve past that. Okay, so we've mentioned the name a couple of times, and I just want to know like the origins of the name, and also like did you intentionally use that instead of the?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Um, the origin. Okay, so I wanted the name to make it very clear that this was a black deck, um, and I don't even want to say just black, because I feel like Afrocentric features, like there's a whole diaspora, so
Right.
like those features are truly global.
Right.
But I wanted people to know just from hearing the name, like what the intention was behind it, and I played with a lot of different options, but none of them really hit me the way I wanted it to. And I was listening to, I think it's called Heat. I was listening to the radio, and one of his more recent popular songs came on, and part of the hook says, "This drip got you in heat," and I love that song. And I was just like, imagine that guy whose drip is just so hot that it's like, damn, his clothes look so good. That drip got me what? Like, so I just was like kind of fixated on the concept of like somebody's swag, somebody's drip just affecting you. And then like literally the name just popped in my head. What about that Afro drip? Like, because it's like, oh, he got that
Yes.
Gucci drip. Oh, he got that, that Fendi drip. Like, but I'm celebrating just blackness as a whole. So what about
Yes.
that Afro drip? And
Yes.
I chose that because I wanted to stand out. I wanted to do something different and unique with the name of my deck. And I feel like there's always the such and such tarot, like one of my favorites, the Light Seers tarot. Like
Yep.
it's everywhere, starting with
Yes.
the.
Like,
So I just wanted to be different. I feel like Black culture is very self-driven and unique in and of itself. So I wanted the name to simultaneously show that like this is for Black people and Black culture, and at the same time, I wanted it to stand out and just kind of hit your ear a little bit different than what you're used to the name of a deck doing. So that was
yes,
that.
you succeeded. You definitely succeeded, because I mean, I have a whole I have that whole section, origin of the name, and then I have a little thing, and I put that in quotation marks, question mark,
Mm-hmm.
question mark. I was like,
Yep.
why did I know that she did that on purpose.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so it definitely hits like a different way when you hear it. It's like that Afro drip is like, damn, like, yes, but
Yeah,
it's
but see,
also
even the way you just said it, like, it just made me so happy. That just made me
it
so happy.
it's no, it really does hit that way. And for me, it's like, and maybe like, this is something that we can talk as we talk about the deck, but like, one of the reasons why I'm so excited about this deck too is because I feel like it's gonna give me like an authentic glimpse into the Black experience. Like, I have the person of color experience, and
Mm-hmm.
I like, but at the same time, it's just not the same for me. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't get the same backlash, or you know what I mean. My
Yeah,
light
yeah.
skin color really does make a difference. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
do kind of, I do have some of that white privilege because of my skin tone, but and so like I struggle a lot because I want to identify with the Black Lives Matter movement, and I want to feel like
Mm-hmm.
it's my movement, but then I feel like, but I'm so light skinned, and like it's such a different experience for me. Like, I don't know
Mm-hmm.
what it's like to be Black in America because I'm not. And so, go ahead.
Well, first of all, I love like your self-awareness and everything that you just said, because it shows that you're not just living through the times, you're actually considering them, and that's just refreshing. So that's kind of unrelated, but I just wanted to tell you that.
Thank you.
Um, but what I would say is there's a phrase that when I was in college, a lot of my peers would say about the diaspora. Um, Same boat, different stop. So yes, you descend from Tainos from Puerto Rico, but at the same time, there were indigenous people in the South American landmass, and there were also natives from Africa that were doing trade with those indigenous
Hmm.
people well before Columbus ever came over here. And even though you do have closer to European features, people can still visually look at you and see that you're a person of color.
Yeah,
So I
for
don't
sure.
ever want you to diminish the struggles that might have come with that. You know what I mean? And that's part of the reason why in my art, I don't just draw dark skinned people. I don't just draw light skinned people or just medium toned people, because my mom, believe it or not, is about your color.
Mm.
And she, especially when she was younger, used to get mistaken for white. I don't think she looks white. I can see that she's a person of color, but folks who might not have that lived experience of seeing a lot of different features couldn't place her, couldn't identify her.
Mm.
So while you might not get the same level of, or maybe I should say, you might not get the same frequency
Mm.
of discrimination that my skin tone and darker would expect to receive. I would argue that if someone were to target you because you are a person of color, as European as your features are, you might even be on the receiving end of something more hateful and violent than like
Mm.
someone calling me a nigger. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm.
yes, that's going to hurt me. I'm going to feel that to my core. But I just think of the type of racists and like prejudiced people that would see your features and still go out of their way to attack you for
Mm.
existing. the struggles, while different, are very much comparable. So like it really does mean a lot to me that I was able to inspire you in any way, but I want you to be able to see yourself in that Afro Drip Tarot too, because I consider you to be a part of the African diaspora. So that's how I feel about that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It really means a lot. And like, that's also kind of what I was hoping to find in it too. You know, I was hoping to find that connection to my my ancestral roots, those African roots, because while I am descended from Taino people, the reality is that Puerto Ricans are a mixture of Spanish, African, and indigenous. And so, and you can see it in my nose, like you can see the African features pretty clearly. And so it's like, and I'm very proud of those, but I also feel like I don't have enough of a connection to it. And so like I have the Dust to Onyx tarot. And I really enjoy that deck, but for me that's super ancestral, like really ancestral. And so I've been looking for something more that I want, that I can see myself in every day. And some of those images that you have are just like humans living their life, doing things in their living daily life, you know? And it's like, that's what I want to see. Like, I want to see actual real human beings that I might see walking around doing stuff, you know? And so like, that's what I love the most about it. And I also love that like, it is that, but then it has these magical aspects to it. Like the Four of Cups. Like it's very like, it's very much like, yeah, she's just chilling under a tree, but then it's got that like magical rain cloud rainbow thing going on top. And so like, I love those like touches of like magic that you've been putting in there too, to kind of give contrast to like the mundane, because the mundane isn't bad. It's just that we have both in our reality. So it's, I really like how you kind of symbolize both of those things.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that, because I feel like with, oh gosh, there's you just keep giving me inspiration for so many different things. Like I feel like with, to touch on what you were saying about wanting to have that ancestral connection through a tarot deck that you also felt like you could see yourself in today. That's really important. Like I have the Dust to Onyx tarot as well. I think it's really evocative. The imagery is really strong. And because of that, I don't think it's an everyday deck, at least not for me. It's not something that I would just throw in a tarot bag, throw in my purse, and like walk around with, because I keep tarot decks in my purse. So I'm that crazy lady. But
hey, I do the same in my backpack. So
hey, then I'm not. Then we're on the same page. So you know how it
we
is.
Are.
It's almost, I don't want to say too powerful or too strong, but it feels very serious and very heavy, you know? And I think that with tarot, there's this phrase I like to say where we have to remember to bring magic into the mundane. So that's something I try to remember, like when I'm upset or whatever. It's just like, you can be literally scrubbing a greasy pot in your kitchen and find magic in that. Because first of all, I own a freaking pot. Second of all, I have the resources to maintain it and keep it clean and sanitize it and feed my family. You know what I mean? Like, it's all about how you perceive things. And so decks that have very, very strong themes, I think, end up working in very specific situations. So for that Afro Drip Tarot, I really wanted it to be a deck that would work sort of just across the board, because I feel like it's got the bright colors for like the happy, positive cards, but then like if you look at my inducement card, my replacement for the devil, the all of the characters have like horns, and they're in this dark dungeon, and they're chained up, and the devil lady is in like dominatrix gear, and she's like in front of a
I
slave
remember that
woman.
card. Yes, I remember.
And so I wanted it to have that whimsy that would make it approachable enough that the art wouldn't be like, oh, I think that might be too heavy for me. But I wanted it to have enough realistic detail that it can deliver serious readings as well as like positive, uplifting, encouraging ones. So it really makes me happy to know that, like, as you're seeing it unfold, it's doing that. So I'm so happy.
Yay, so am I, you know, and it really kind of like it brings me to my next question. Like, what so what creative liberties did you take with this? You mentioned that you changed the devil card,
Hmm.
the name. How closely did you follow Rider-Waite Smith? Are there certain cards that like you've shifted the definition, but then the other cards are pretty close? Like, what kind of creative changes have you decided to go with? And
Hmm.
like court names and elements and stuff like that. Like,
So
if you
I
can
would
share,
say,
I don't know if you how much you can share about your project. I don't know how much you want to keep. Like,
okay, yeah, no, it's cool.
okay.
So I would say I've taken a good amount of liberty with the deck. I still want it to be as universal as possible while keeping to my intention of it being a deck by a person of color for people of color. Um, so some of the changes that I've made have been with the, like, remembering how certain cards would confuse me when I was new to tarot, um, like justice and judgment. The names are very, very similar. And even though the art is different on the cards, I felt like with the judgment card, the figure of a big angel kind of looking down on corpses gave a sense of, well, being judged. But I
Mm,
also felt like Lady Justice holding up her sword with the scales gave me a sense of
mm,
being judged as well.
mm-hmm.
So I liked the concept of justice because it made me think of Ma'at, who is an Egyptian goddess, so bringing in
Yes.
some African culture in there. Um,
Yes.
but I changed justice because I felt like, for one, it's overtly Christian, having the angel Raphael up there. And I want people from whatever spiritual background to be able to come comfortably to that Afro Drip.
Mm,
So I got rid of the angel. I got rid of the dead people because it always confused me. I would read the definition for the card and just have to kind of make it fit onto the picture itself.
mm.
Um,
Yeah.
and over the years of reading tarot, as you get the card in certain situations, you start to formulate your own understanding. And I looked at the judgment card as that moment when you are forced to reflect before you can level up to the world. So
Yes.
I always wanted, I always loved this judgment card from oh gosh, what's the name of the deck? It's the Afro Goddess Tarot Arcanas. I think
Mm.
the Judgment card in that deck is just beautiful, just gorgeous. And she's walking up some steps, and there's like an angel up at the top. But the staircase was what really captivated me on that particular art. So because I think of judgment as also part of a cycle. It repeats.
Mm.
Once you get to the world, you're going back to the fool kind of thing. So
Yes,
I
totally.
always loved the idea of, what if the steps were a spiral to show that cycle in that judgment card?
Mm,
So that was why I
yes.
said, okay, this is before we're leveling up, like ascending a staircase in a spiral, in a cycle. So I
Yes.
put this woman on this spiral staircase with these two mirrors showing that as she gets higher on the staircase, each time she has to stop and look at herself, and look at
Mm.
herself authentically, and give herself permission to move up to that
Yes.
next part of that cycle. So I have made some changes with some names, with the art, but it's always with the intention of trying to make the meaning clearer. So I
Mm.
did the same thing. I used to get the Two of Wands and the Three of Wands very confused visually in the Rider-Waite. They look very,
Yeah,
very similar.
they do.
Um, and it took me forever to understand the nuance and get the difference between them. So my and I changed wands to scepters because that just seemed more like
Mm.
I could see a king in Nigeria or somewhere with a nice golden scepter,
Yeah, yeah,
so that
true.
was like why I did that. But I kept my two very, very similar to the Rider Waite too, because I do feel like it gives this sense of thinking and making it a choice. But my three, instead of having somebody looking out over the sea again, I think of that as launching, setting things into motion, something long term. So I chose to take inspiration from my life. I have a younger sister who opened up a hair salon last year. And so I drew her at her ribbon cutting ceremony just before that ribbon is cut.
Oh,
And
that's
so
awesome.
there, that open sign and the salon behind her, she's got a suitcase with an airplane ticket sticking out of her purse on the ground. So it's meant to show, okay, this venture has been launched. That doesn't mean it's long-term successful, but the action has been taken. So
Right.
now we got to wait and see, you know, how is this going to expand? Is it going to succeed? Is it going to fail? You know, before we get to that four. But this is that moment right as that expansion is taking off. So that plane ticket and the purse and the suitcase is meant to show like the business agreements that the three of wands can sometimes indicate, and the travel aspect of it, so that people could see just in, you know, what scene are you looking at, the difference in like, what does this card mean versus this card. So I have taken some creative liberties, but it's always to like put an Afrocentric lens on it, and or to make the meaning clearer than what it was for me as a newbie with the Rider-Waite deck. So, I'm doing the same. I'm doing the same. I haven't started on any of my court cards yet because I decided to do the pips first.
Okay,
But
makes sense. Court cards are hard.
Yeah, court card, and I wanted to make sure that I had the experience of the rest of the deck already under my belt, so I could make sure I finished on a strong suit.
Yes, I agree. I don't blame you.
Yeah, like I feel like you said, we've outgrown certain things. Like the archetypes are the same, the meanings are universal, but like, who knows what a page is when you live in like the modern era? Like,
honestly,
you gotta
I had to
Google,
look it
what do
up.
pages do? You know what I mean? Like,
Totally. When I
so
first got into tarot, I was like, what the fuck is a page?
yeah, like it's like, what do these people do? Why am I supposed to have any sort of connection to these people in these little hats? Like, it was weird. So I decided to take a I guess inspiration from oh gosh, I'm gonna butcher the name. I think it's pronounced the Kabbalion. I've heard other people say Kabbalion. I think it's Kabbalion, but it's a Hermetic text, and there are different levels that one reaches in studying Hermeticism. So I decided, because Hermeticism, as far as my understanding, was it originated in Egypt, once again, bringing in some African influence. And I just love the whole, it's not a dogma, but I love Hermeticism. And so I just decided, you know what? I'm going to take these levels of ascension, because in my mind, that's what the court cards are. When you start at the page, you've gone through that ace through 10. So yeah, you're still the youngest court, but you're not anything to sneeze at either.
Right.
And as you get up in the levels, it's just more and more experience and skill dealing with that suit's energy. So I felt like these levels of learning kind of made sense as my court card name. So I'm excited to see what your courts are called.
Yeah.
I think for my kings and queen, I even hate king and queen just because the implication is man and woman, and there's that hierarchy that just is, I don't like that, you know. Since I think of them as like ranks, what I'm kind of thinking about doing is sort of gender bending the court cards and having two male queens and two female kings, and have the names be mentor for the queen rank and master for the king. So to show, like, you know, regardless of your sex, your gender identity, you can be a master of a suit's energy, and you can be a mentor. You can have that empathy in order to nurture the growth of others, whether you are masculine or female presented.
I love that.
I hate this notion of like, oh, queens are water because the mothers, the nurturers, you know, like, yeah, like that archetype exists for a reason, but I feel like it sort of sends this message that feminine energy, empathy, nurturing are solely for female presenting humans, and that's just not true.
Mm.
So I'm not sure what I'm gonna switch, but that's kind of where my mind is
That's where
going.
your mind is now. It's exciting. I'm really excited to see like what you come out with. Yeah, so how did you get to like, okay, I'm doing Procreate, and also did you ever consider getting an illustrator?
Initially, when I started when I decided I'm going to make a deck, before I knew it was going to be a product that I would put out, I just started searching like how to make your own tarot deck, because I was thinking, okay, even if I make all the drawings, how do I get it printed on cards? Um, and so from searching that, I came across a lot of articles that said, hey, you know, you can make a deck even if you can't draw. You can commission an artist. And so I did consider it briefly. Um, but because it was supposed to, at that point, just be a personal deck, I couldn't justify spending
Mm.
the money that it would have required to commission a professional artist for 78 pieces.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a lot.
is Yeah, because it was just, if I had set out with the intention of selling it, then I might have made a different decision.
Mm.
But because it was just, I want my own deck that I'm in love with, that every symbol makes sense to me, that all the colors pop to me. You know,
Mhm.
I wanted my deck in a sense. Um,
Yes.
so I decided, you know what, I might be able to find an artist who can capture what's in my brain, but the more likely thing is that I'm gonna have to learn how to get it out of my brain myself. Um, so I started just looking up like how to draw videos on YouTube, and I fairly quickly found like a core group of artists that I just loved, not just the work that they were doing, but their personalities and how they would teach. And I loved that they were all able to go from like a sketchbook and a pencil to a drawing tablet. And I loved how their skills, even with these different media, translated across
Mm.
the board. Um, so that was what made me say, okay, I'm going to dedicate a year to study the fundamentals. But in watching the initial artists that inspired me, I just I just fucking fell in love with all of the endless possibilities that there are in digital art. Not just in Procreate, but in pretty much any digital art program that's worth its salt. I mean, I got my start on a very inexpensive, I think it's, what size would this be? Like maybe a 12, not even 12 across. This is probably like 9 inches, maybe
Yeah, probably
a
that
little 9 inch
about,
like
yeah.
drawing tablet, where like I couldn't look at the screen. I had to have my hand off to the side and look at my laptop, and I was using a free drawing program. Um, but I knew that the art that drew the most emotion out of me was being done digitally. And so I said, you know what, go big or go home. Like we're going to figure out how to paint digitally, which was something I had never done before. But I said, you know what, I feel comfortable enough drawing a face, drawing an arm, drawing a leg at this point, that I think I can draw a face and a leg and an arm on an iPad, because my mom
Mm.
knew I was working on a deck, and that wonderful, amazing woman um, surprised me with an iPad
Oh,
as a
that's so
gift. And
amazing.
it was funny because I think I know the moment that she decided to get it for me. Traditionally, I'm Android all the way. I don't really like Apple
Yeah.
products, but my mom loves Apple stuff, and she had an iPad Pro with the Apple Pencil. And one day her screen was on, and I was at her desk, and I just doodled on her screen, just playing around. But the responsiveness of the pen was so incredible to me. I
Oh
was like,
man,
oh my
it's
God.
another level. It's another
Yeah,
level.
I like freaked out. And my mom, she was just like, so you like drawing on this? And I was like, I mean, I can see why people like this. This is incredible. And she didn't say anything else. But
But
then a
that
few
was the
months
moment.
later, yeah, a few months later, she gave it to me. And so I think with Procreate, I decided on that app in particular. She knew I wanted Procreate, so that was probably also part of her motivation. And she knew that it was iPad only. But I think I had decided on that program because I feel like its interface is set up in a way where all the tools don't get in your way. Like you can focus on just drawing. And then if you need to change the blending mode or do a Gaussian blur or transform something, all of that's there, but it's not in your face staring at you the entire time while you're trying to
Yes.
figure out how is this finger supposed to be angled if she's holding this scepter. So like Procreate just kind of seemed like a program where if I learned how to use it, um, I would be able to get into the flow of drawing rather than the flow of switching settings and clicking things. Because I wanted to kind of emulate those people who inspired me at first and be able to say, oh, yeah, if you give me a piece of paper and a pencil, I can draw just as well as I can on my iPad. So that was like kind of the thinking behind that.
That's really awesome. So before you started getting into, so you said you decided you were going to give yourself a year to study art.
Mm-hmm.
Before then, had you studied art any sort of way? Had you like were you drawn
Yeah.
to painting or anything like that? Or is it like you started from scratch, like you didn't know how to do anything?
Well, it wasn't quite from scratch. My original major when I went to college was fashion design. And I've
Mm,
always really enjoyed what I would just call doodling, you know, like just sitting at a bus stop waiting for my bus and I might draw like the building across the street type of thing.
okay, okay.
So that was something that just kind of came naturally to me from very early on in childhood. But at the time I decided to give myself a year to study, I hadn't really sketched or drawn anything in probably like a decade.
Oh wow.
Um, because I changed my major from fashion design to English, which is totally unrelated.
Yes.
But my first love was always writing and reading and just
Mm,
expression and words, very Gemini. Um,
yes.
but like communicating ideas was always my first love. So I do think that English was the best fit for me at that point in time. But I needed that refresher and that like promise to myself that I was going to take it seriously enough to feel proud of the end result.
Mm,
And I didn't want to do that year of study, um, but I knew I needed to. I knew that
yeah.
like if I wanted to get to this level where other people could look at my art and have emotional responses the way I was having to the people who inspired me, that I would have to do the best practice and just get my skills up. So that was like very intense but needed, and it brought back a lot of skills that had just kind of I had forgotten. So
When that's just really inspirational because like really like I'm sure, not downplaying the difficulty of how like that year, the challenges and learning and stuff, but it's a year. Like you can learn in a year,
mm-hmm.
and even for some people it might be faster, for some people it might take a little bit longer, but this is something that you can do. Like I remember I'm not that great of an artist, but when I was like in between jobs and I was
Well,
just at home all day.
I'm gonna just stop you there, Johnny. I love you, but stop saying that you're not that great of an artist
Okay, sorry.
because that's something I had to learn, and I feel like it's very important, and I'm really passionate about it. I don't know if you remember, but oh gosh, this was probably I think I might have been working on the star, but you commented on one of my cards and you told me that, oh gosh, I'm not going to get mushy. You told me that I had inspired you to download Procreate, but that you were having a difficult time learning the interface. And I just remember being like, I inspired somebody. Like it was just, it couldn't connect. And I was talking to my mom about it and she was like, Neek, like you can't, if you shit on yourself before anyone else gets a chance to do so, you're always going to feel like shit. And she just really put it in perspective and was like,
Touche.
you're new on this art journey, but the fact that you've chosen to take it makes you an artist. So good or bad is subjective regardless. There are people who would slash a Picasso today if they got their hands on one. So and I loved the colors that you chose in your tower card. I loved the layers that you put in the Moldavite. Like, I understand what you're saying about it's not quite the finished piece that you want, but you can always push it further. That's one of the beauties of digital art. If you need to add another layer and put a shadow underneath of something or change the blending mode to something, like there's always an option there. And the fact that you're working on 2 decks simultaneously tells me that you have the drive to figure it out. So I know I cut you off and I'm sorry, but
No worries.
I just really want to emphasize, like, you are the artist that you tell yourself you are. So if you're saying I'm not that great, I'm not that great, I'm not that great, you're going to internalize that. And like, I like what you're doing even as just your sketch. So like, I know you can push it into something that you're going to like too.
Thank you so much. I don't even worry about cutting me off. Those are just those moments where spirit's like, shut up, listen. So I deeply appreciate that. And I just want to say here, we have a comment. It says, I'm not an artist, but watching your video has inspired me to check out Procreate on YouTube for my iPad. So we have more people.
So happy.
So more people being inspired. And yes, I really feel, I remember that comment. Because I saw that art and I was like, this is it. Like, this is what I need to do. And at the time, I was really convinced that I was the one who had to be the artist. Like, I had to do it. And so that's where the energy of that comment was coming from too, because I was like, man, there's so much and I'm just starting from scratch. Like, I can't. But so then when it shifted to me wanting to collaborate with my brother as the illustrator, it really opened up Procreate for me, and now I feel a lot more comfortable knowing that I'm just doing the sketches. And if I wanted
to put that weight on yourself, right, of like, it has to turn out XYZ. You
exactly.
can explore and just create, and I think that's when the best things come out.
So thank you for that reminder. And yeah, it's definitely a big inspiration for me to see that, like, you know, we're like at the beginning of 1 year, you were not that familiar, and now 1 year later, you're able to do this. And so for those people who are like struggling and wondering if they should or if it's going to take, just do it. Just if you're feeling called to. The only reason why because I considered like doing something like you, like taking a year or something to learn how to do it. But Spirit was like, no, this is now. Like, it's not a year from now. It's now that needs to come out. And I was like, well, okay, so you have 36 and a half cards done. Do you have like a deadline? Are you going to do Kickstarters? Do you want to do pre-order? Like, do you have a plan for like that, the ending process? Or are you waiting until you get a little bit closer to the end of the deck?
So I do have the general gist of all of that worked out. Initially, I was going to go with Kickstarter for the funding, but I ended up getting this go at your own pace, how to publish your own tarot deck course from Benabel Wynn. And if you don't have that already, get it. It is the best $40 you will ever spend.
Okay.
I promise you.
I didn't even know it existed. So, and I love her.
Get it.
She's
get
amazing.
It. Get it.
Okay. Okay.
It's basically just a PDF book that you get to read yourself, but it breaks down every single step of the process of indie publishing a tarot or oracle deck.
Wow.
And because of the insight I gained from her course, I decided that it was unnecessarily risky to use a third-party platform to raise the funds. Excuse me, just because they end up taking quite a big chunk, like a decent percentage.
Yeah, that's what I've heard about Kickstarter.
And I didn't want to risk not having my numbers right and thinking that, okay, I need this amount of money and I set that goal and then come to find out, oops, no, I should have set that goal plus fees so that I wouldn't end up with a funded project and not enough money to actually see it through to completion. So I'm going to end up, the plan is to make a sales page on my own website, writingwithtarot.com, and just let people back it there. And I want to have the pre-order phase or period open from the end of May, so very soon,
Oh wow,
to
yeah.
the end of August. I've already I've already found a manufacturer that is able to print the deck to the specifications that I want, which is harder than you might think because, again, like how we were saying with the name, I chose that instead of the because I wanted it to be really unique. I'm using waterproof cardstock and I'm doing a couple of other sort of unique things. And so it's been sort of tough finding a manufacturer that says, yes, we have that cardstock and we have the capability to do this and we can do it by this time. But I'm in talks with a couple of different ones who've confirmed that they can do it. So I'm looking forward to like finalizing that stuff and getting that sales page up, because from everything I've read from Benabel Wynn's course, it's going to be an exhausting roller coaster, but I'm excited to like see my cards in people's hands after working
Yes.
on it for
So
almost 2
long.
years. So yeah, right now that's the plan. Just going to use my website and have them printed overseas and shipped to me, and then I'll send them out to the backers.
Awesome. So yeah, so it'll definitely be more like a pre-order style where they're just going to go to your website, order it from you, and then receive the deck directly from you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I've been considering that too because Kickstarter, like I know there's fees
Mm-hmm.
to doing Kickstarters. I do know like obviously there's like more publicity with Kickstarter and stuff, but I feel like um especially with like a project like yours that has so many people's eyes on them like like honestly like it's just the truth, you know, like and when you get into that space it's like you have that confidence in what you're manifesting, you have confidence in what you're creating. Start.
Well, I tend to kind of go my own way in general,
Yes,
but
no, I love that.
um, I would just say it's very independent. It depends on you, you know, like I've built websites before. I know how to code to a certain extent. I'm very comfortable with WordPress. I have several WordPress websites. So that's something that I have years of experience under my belt
Mm.
doing, you know, making simple web pages and contact forms and things
Which
like
is
that.
super helpful because listen, getting my website together has been on my to-do list for the past like 3 or 4 months. So I
Yeah,
get you.
it can, especially like when I think about like the first website I built, which was a Google Blogger blog, which I mean, the fact that I'm even saying blogger, I feel like I'm aging myself, but I don't care because I'll be 30 on May 30th, so I'm fine with that. But
Yes.
when I think back to that, like I just remember how draining it was trying to get like a simple web page to look how I want it. So if you've got the resources to go with a pre-order on a website that you own, I would say go ahead and do it. But at the same time, if it's going to save you time, money, or stress to hire a professional to do that for you or to go with Kickstarter, then I would say do what makes sense for you, because what I took away most from the course that I'm referring to was that you have to have your numbers right beforehand. So as long as
Hmm.
you crunch your numbers properly and you set your goal at the number that you need, then you'll be fine. Kickstarter fees, you know, included. But that's the biggest caveat. And I was too nervous when people are giving me their money to risk not crunching those numbers properly, because the way I looked at it was, at least with a pre-order, if if someone gives me money on my website directly, yes, if I fall short of my fundraising goal, I will have to manually refund them. But um then at least I have that transparency of being able to show people, hey, this is what happened.
Right.
Because I just feel like if you set a goal lower than what you actually need and people back you and they get the notification that this project is funded, it's coming to life, and then you contact them and say, hey, actually I needed another 10,000, so I can't print
Yeah.
that, so I'm gonna have to figure out how to refund you, then go ahead and try to publish a deck later if you want to, and
Right.
people will remember. They'll be like,
Oh yeah.
you the one from that fucked up tarot and I'm not doing it.
Yes. Yes.
So I just was too afraid to like take that risk. So that was what made me make that decision. But I think if you have your numbers right, using their audience, because obviously Kickstarter is a huge platform, it could expose your work to people that might not see it otherwise. So it's
Right.
a pros and cons thing. You got to
Right.
decide, like, based on your personal situation and the goals for your deck, what is going to make sense.
Yeah, exactly. And the money crunching numbers thing has been a big thing for me because I live here in Puerto Rico. So like shipping and like trying to figure a printer, like I'm definitely not gonna find one here on the island. You know, I'm gonna probably have to, well, I'm gonna look
Mm-hmm.
here, but I don't think I'm gonna find a printing factory that's gonna be able to do tarot cards for me. But so yeah, the finding of the printer process, like, was that difficult? Like, was that a challenge? Like, or were you able to relatively easily find, because now there's more publishing companies doing tarot decks. So yeah, okay, no
So
worries.
it wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. There are websites that are designed to connect like vendors and buyers of printed media. So I used
Mm.
Alibaba.com, and then there's another website called madeinchina.com. And then I just searched tarot deck, and then it'll bring up printers that can make oracle size cards, tarot cards, custom games, whatever you
Oh.
need. And I will say I kind of jumped the gun on that part a little bit because I contacted a manufacturer a year ago and just was like, "Hey, can you do da 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 da?" And they were just like, how much of the art did you say you have done?"
Yeah.
So I did kind of jump the gun on that, and of course, like, paper prices change, shipping prices change. We had a whole pandemic happen,
Yeah, yeah.
so the quotes that you get can shift a lot. But I think the main thing is, like, if you know what you want, because they're going to be like, what weight of paper do you want? What size in millimeters are you printing? What are you doing borderless, meaning that you have to design your cards beyond the cutting point of the paper, or are you going to put a border on yourself? What size box do you want? What kind of box? Is it a tuck box? Is it a two-piece box? Is it a magnetic box with a flip top? Are you going to have I'm doing something, are you going to have a guidebook? Is it going to be a digital guidebook? Is it, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot to consider. But if you know what all of that is, and you can say, this is what I want to have printed, can I get a quote? Are you able to do something to these specifications? Then they're pretty good about getting right back to you and letting you know either what the whole unit would cost, or they can even break it down like, this is what your cards are going to cost in the box. This is what the box itself is going to cost in that unit. This is what the guidebook is going to cost. So then you can decide, okay, if it's 94 cents per guidebook to print it with X amount of pages, and I was kind of trying to keep it small, maybe I'll go up to this number of pages because that's only going to cost $1 per guidebook, and I think it's worth it.
Hmm.
So having all of your specs laid out is going to just streamline everything.
Yeah, that makes sense. And see, that's where like I struggle because like I guess like you would think that like having a Gemini mind would be good for that. But on the contrary, for me, like, because I'm Gemini and also Aquarius moon and Aquarius rising, like I just feel like I'm all over the place all the time.
Oh, so you're just analyzing everything. You're
Yes.
like, what is this? What is this? What is this?
Yes, like, and so like it's hard. Like everything that you just said, I was like, damn, I didn't even think about like what kind of box I'm gonna, like a tuck box, magnetic box, like damn, all these questions that I have to consider.
Yeah, it's a lot. When I finish, yes.
Um,
Yeah, it's a lot to consider, but like, that's why I said, like, get Benabel Wynn's book,
yeah, I'm gonna
because
get it for
before
sure.
that I hadn't considered all of this stuff either. I just was
Okay.
like, I'm gonna print it.
Yeah, and
I'm gonna
that's it.
sell it. I don't know, but
Yeah.
he really does a great job of like leading you through in a logical order the process of like the things that you need to think about and decisions that you need to make before you start contacting people. So
Okay, cool.
like, get
So
it, get
like
it, get it.
definitely gonna get that course for sure because I think it's gonna be really helpful for me. I know that also Kim from Fables Den, the Way of the Panda Tarot, she also has an e-resource for deck
Hmm.
creators and stuff that I have been told is really helpful. So if anybody's interested, there's Venable's course, and then also Kim has one as well, a resource. Okay, Shaniqua, so I think I've asked you all of the questions that I've had. I'm so excited for your deck. I have energetically pre-ordered already.
Thank
So,
you so much. That's so sweet.
I have energetically pre-ordered your deck. So I'm just really excited to see the progress and excited to see how, how the campaign goes and how everything just flows with you. I wanted to open up the space to see if there was any like last piece of advice you would like to offer somebody who wants to start this journey, who wants to create a deck or anything like that, or maybe if we've covered everything, we've covered it. But if you do have anything else, like this is your space.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. This has been a really fun conversation. I think that's just two Geminis talking. It's always going to be fun.
Yes. Yes.
But I if anyone watching this, like either present or in the future, is considering going on this journey, I would say be very, 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 you cannot be too clear on your why behind this project, because there are probably an untold number of unfinished tarot decks laying in people's sketchbooks or on their computers or their iPads or what have you. 78 is not a small number, and art in and of itself is a very demanding undertaking. So if you decide to combine those two, the tarot, which is already in and of itself an inexhaustible topic, with creative expression, with business, if you decide to sell it, because that is a whole separate topic.
Right.
Be very clear on why you're doing so, because there will be people who will say things about your deck that seem very careless. There will be people who straight up say your shit's ugly. There will be people who will message you and tell you what changes you need to make to a card that you're very, very proud of. So it will force you to contend with some aspects of humanity that are less than pleasant. And if your constitution or your motivation behind such a long process and such a public process, if you choose to share it while you're making the art, it can just be so confronting, and it can force you to look at certain aspects of maybe yourself or your understanding of the world, or your own boundaries that make you uncomfortable. But if your reasoning is strong and you believe in it, you will stand behind it and you will keep going. You'll have the fire behind you that you need when the water and the weight of emotion from interacting with people makes you want to quit. So if you think it would just be fun to make a tarot deck, don't do it. But if there's a need that you think you can fill for yourself, others, or both, then go ahead and do it, because you probably are filling a need. So just be very, 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 very clear, and try to shrug off the haters as much as you can, because you can't please everybody. It's not possible.
So I think it's such an important like piece of advice to like really deeply understand and assess like where you're coming from, where your heart is, why you're doing this, because there's a lot of like, it's exciting and happy and awesome, but it's also like stressful and like anxiety ridden a lot of times. And like, these aren't bad things. These are just things that happen in life, and these are things that we have to like go through. And like you said, maybe you're gonna feel anger if somebody does what you said about like commenting on a card or saying this or hurt or sad. These are all things that as deck creators or as creators in general, what the stuff that we do, not everybody's gonna like. I myself had an experience recently with this series, where it was, having to find my own voice in kind of this community and like kind of create space for that. And like feel like I'm valid and like worthy of being in this space, you know? Not allowing like imposter syndrome to like take over and like.
And that's something that I struggle with a ton, you know. I feel like I'm better at it now, but with with putting out the art for my deck, I've seen obviously an increase in followers and stuff, and I had to like sort of reconcile the fact that like people people put weight to my words, you know. I had to really like accept that, like you said, it's a good thing, it's a powerful thing, it's a beautiful thing. I feel very honored that people look at me the way that they do. But there are times where it's just like it can feel very heavy because it seems like the responsibility of being as visible as we are, even in a niche as small as tarot. But there's a certain weight that comes with that I think until you're in that position, it's hard to really understand. And so I think that like your perspective is just a really healthy one. You know what I mean? Because it's like you're taking it in, but like as needed, you know what I mean? Like
Right.
gradually, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
So that way you can adjust along with that growth, you know?
Right.
And so that imposter syndrome, something that I have felt and like still struggle with, but I think it comes with the territory, you know? Like when you are a creative who displays your creations, especially like unabashedly, you know what I mean? I think it can be sort of magnetic. It can be alluring. People like that type of energy. And when you're the holder of it, you have to take care of yourself to maintain it. So,
Yep.
yeah.
Well, wow. This has been so amazing. Such a lovely conversation. I've learned a lot, and I am very inspired and motivated to continue with my project. I am an
Excellent.
artist.
Yes, you
And
are.
I accept that fully and I embrace that. Thank you. I wanted to like maybe give you some space, Shaniqua, to like just give that little outro, where to find you, Instagram, and just yeah.
Okay. So I'm most active on Instagram. So my Instagram is what Shaniqua's into. You can follow me there. I post rough sketches, refined sketches, color palettes, and then like the whole process from start to finish of each card as I finish them. My website is writingwithtarot.com. I also have a YouTube channel, which is what Shaniqua's into. I post there occasionally, but I'm also planning to do a series of 22 videos explaining the major arcana from that Afro Drip Tarot.
Ooh.
So keep an eye out for that. And yeah, if you follow me and you want to reach out, definitely message me, leave me a comment. I really love interacting with this community, and like I said, Instagram is definitely where I'm most active. So I look forward to getting to know everybody.
Yes, thank you so much. This has been such a healing and lovely conversation. I'm really excited for that Afro Drip Tarot. And for those who are just coming in now, I will be posting the replay. You can feel free to check that out. We had a lively discussion about a lot of different things, a lot of really important topics in the tarot community, a lot of important topics for people who are deck creators. So yeah, make sure to watch the replay and leave a comment and share. But yeah, this has been such a great night, Shaniqua. I deeply appreciate you coming on here with me. And hey, maybe once you get the publish, we can jump on here again and do kind of like a part 2 and see
Oh yeah,
like
like a
where we,
before and after. That would be
right.
really fun. That would be great.
Yes.
Thank you again for having me. Thank you so much. This was great.
You're so welcome. Well, have a lovely night, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. I appreciate your presence here. Much love to everybody.
Bye.
Bye, Shaniqua.